What do you think is the biggest secret being kept from mankind? That there are people in the world that are richer than the known richest people in the world. If you are that rich, you can afford to be anonymous too. I'm not saying that Jeff Bezos isn't rich. I'm sure he is. I just believe that there are a tiny group of people that have more wealth than Bezos, and that they've used that wealth to hide the fact that they are that wealthy from the world. People that are secretly alive but dead for the public life and vice versa. When I was younger, I read a story in the news of a company that had come up with a bacteria that they would put into your mouth. This bacteria was harmless to people, but ate the bacteria that damages our teeth. It would have destroyed the dental industry. For some reason, I never saw it again. True history. I genuinely believe that there have been things discovered in the past that tell a different story of the past and are intentionally hidden. People who have came close to dying. What were your last thoughts? I was stabbed in the neck by someone robbing my house. I totally thought I was going to die. I hate myself, but I begged the guy who stabbed me to stay because I didn't want to die alone. He said sorry and walked away. That effing broke my heart. Thankfully he called 911 for me. I was in a fight and I didn't know I was stabbed in the liver and the lung. I walked away with my friend and collapsed in an alley. I remember bleeding out with calming waves of euphoria washing over me and I thought, I've lived enough. I'm okay with this. I blacked out and woke up in the back of an ambulance with waves of immense pain assaulting my body. Dying isn't awful. Surviving is awful. I thought I was having a DRG overdose. I just remember thinking how disappointed my mom was going to be with me. Was run over by a bus last year. My thought when I went under the tires was, but it's a Wednesday. I pictured my husband coming home to an empty house and I desperately hoped people would reach out and make sure he was okay. Couldn't stand the thought of him being alone. It gets weirder and weirder the more you think about it. The fact that everyone reading this has a whole life and this is the only time we will most likely ever interact. The fact that we just chose an animal and no really communication ever takes place and we just say you live with me now I'm going to feed you and take care of you and they are like okay. Consciousness. We are all just a floating bag of brain inside of a meat ship and yet we can think and act for ourselves. We are the universe experiencing itself. Either the universe has always existed or at some point it started existing. Neither one makes sense. You don't wash your hands, they wash each other while you watch. The fact that I'm going to die, like yes, I get it, but I am going to die and someone will have to take care of my corpse. No likey. What are some of the best choices you've made in your life? When I was in kindergarten, if you did stuff well and didn't get in trouble you earned points that you could buy a reward with. I saved mine up for a long time to get a mini gumball machine. But when I finally went to get it I made a split-second decision to buy a glass rose that was another one of the prizes, because I was about to visit my grandma and I wanted to give her something. Now every time I visit my grandma for years I get a little warm feeling seeing that rose sitting carefully in her living room above the fireplace. Marrying my wife, along with being a loving, hilarious, gorgeous geek, she had the emotional intelligence to help me go to therapy and get past decades of baggage from my family because she had done the same to get through her childhood issues. I love seeing how she is as a mother to our 2 kids. I'm so glad they'll never have reason to fear their mother like I did. What is the laziest thing you've ever done? Used to have one of those clap-on, clap-off lights in my room. I hated clapping so I just made an audio recording of me clapping and mapped it to one of the programmable keys on my keyboard. Shot 10 Nerf darts at my light switch from bed. Missed all of them and slept with the lights on. Called the restaurant to send the waiter back to my table. I was laying in bed with the light on and wanted to go to sleep with it off. I called my house from my cell phone and asked for myself in a disguised voice. When my mom came in to bring me the phone I asked her to turn the light out when she left. Hung up both phones and went to sleep. Drove to class. Escalators up to 3rd floor classroom were broken. Went home. I was drunk one night and decided the bathroom was too far away. So I pissed in my cat's litter box. Didn't feel like cleaning it up in the morning so I just threw the whole litter box in the garbage. I've been sitting on the toilet for 45 minutes cause I don't want to pull my pants up. What's your gotta take one for the team story? Kind of a gotta take one for the team but it's a pretty shitty one. I was a freshman in high school and it was homecoming. Our class pulled a shitty prank on this girl who had a learning disability and voted for her to be the freshman rep as a joke and she won. Well the guy that got voted to walk with her backed out the day before and I was second in line. Being a freshman, knowing it was a joke and knowing I'd have to walk her down with everyone watching I was mortified but I did it. I remember my stepbrother giving me shit and laughing at me and then my stepfather found out what I was going to do. He chewed my stepbrother out and was immensely proud of me. I don't think she ever figured out it was a joke and she was so happy that night. It was probably the highlight of her high school years honestly. Some 25 years later my dad ran into her parents and they still thanked me to him. You just never know whose life you might touch. Be kind. I was out with a bunch of my friends and the designated driver effed off and left us about 10 minutes into the party. I did not have my license but I knew the people I was with and I knew they would drive drunk. So I didn't drink and I drove them home. Got pulled over by the RCMP. He asked for license and registration. I gave him the registration but said I didn't have a license. I had let my beginners lapse and didn't get it because I didn't have regular access to a car. He started in on me asking me why I was driving without a license and I said pointed to each person in the car and said, drunk, 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 drunk and I didn't drink. He gave me back the registration and said carry on. Friend of mine got in a late night fight at a bar and was sent to the closest police station. Everyone left and I was left with him. Rode the police car with him and called our lawyer and helped through all the legal procedures to pay bail and get him out. Still had to get to work by 8 a.m. It was the most disturbing thing the popular kid did. Freshman year in high school, the jocks pooped in their hands and smeared it all over bathroom walls of the place we were staying on a school trip, as well as a lot of other weird shit. Popular girl in middle school made fun of several other people, including me, for being virgins and proudly talking about the fact that she wasn't a virgin. We were 12 to 13. At the time it really upset me. Looking back, I feel really sorry for her. Science teacher at my school used to keep fish in her classroom. A girl in my year thought it would be hilarious to poison them by tipping acid into the tank, thus killing all the fish. Kids are horrible. Why would anyone want to be a teacher is beyond me. There was a guy I went to high school with who wasn't the most popular but was in that crowd. He got arrested for effing a dog, which was weird because he had a GF at the time. The reason I mention her is because then she became the girl whose boyfriend had effed a dog, faked his grandma's death on TikTok, and followed with a video of him resurrecting her through the power of God. What do you think is the biggest secret being kept from mankind? That there are people in the world that are richer than the known richest people in the world. If you are that rich, you can afford to be anonymous too. I'm not saying that Jeff Bezos isn't rich. I'm sure he is. I just believe that there are a tiny group of people that have more wealth than Bezos, and that they've used that wealth to hide the fact that they are that wealthy from the world. People that are secretly alive but dead for the public life and vice versa. When I was younger, I read a story in the news of a company that had come up with a bacteria that they would put into your mouth. This bacteria was harmless to people, but ate the bacteria that damages our teeth. It would have destroyed the dental industry. For some reason, I never saw it again. True history. I genuinely believe that there have been things discovered in the past that tell a different story of the past and are intentionally hidden. Killed an elderly man in front of his wife and basically his entire family. One night when I was in college, I was driving to get some liquor for a party my fraternity was supposed to throw the following night. I was taking a street I was very familiar with to get back to my house. It was dark but the street was lit with street lamps. I remember that I looked at my radio for a second, just a second, not very long at all, but when I looked back up to the road there was a man crossing. I didn't have any time to react. By the time I saw him he had already hit the hood of my car and bounced off the side. I remember screaming and hitting the brakes, and the wash of horror of what had just happened. I'll admit I had thought about speeding away, but I pulled over to the side and ran out of my car to check on this guy. When I got to him, his family was standing outside the restaurant he was leaving and they were all screaming and crying. He was laying on the side of the road with blood coming out his nose and mouth. Two other men were standing with him trying to see if he was alright and calling 911. All I could say was, I didn't see him. I was frantic by the time it had set in what I had done. I sat on the curb across from the family and listened to their crying in agony while we waited for the paramedics to arrive. I sat there and sobbed while two paramedics took him away in an ambulance. I don't believe I've ever cried so hard and for so long. The worst part about all of it and what still kills me today was that his wife came over to me while I was distraught on that curb, sat next to me, placed her hand on my shoulder and said, I was married to him for almost 50 years. We had a good life. Then she hugged me and said that she forgave me. After everything was said and done, it was ruled that it was an accident. I wasn't charged with anything and I had one of my friends pick me up from the police station. I went down a dark path the years after that. I drank heavily, dropped out of college in my senior year, and had to move back in with my mother and father because I couldn't hold on to a job. Even tried to end myself with pills. It was a hard road to recovery, which I feel I'm not fully recovered from, nor do I feel I ever will be the same. But eventually I got my life back in order, joined up with the Navy and saw a bit of the world, and now I'm on track to go back to college and hopefully finish what I started there. It took almost a decade, but I finally start to feel almost whole again. I'm back to hanging with my friends, and actually going out, so maybe there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Adults, what's one opinion of yours that completely changed when you grew up? As a 13-year-old, the fact that my parents would sit down to watch TV on weeknights after dinner made me think they were mindless drones. Turns out they were just tired from work, cooking dinner, dealing with my bullshit, etc., and just wanted to rest for a few hours before repeating the cycle. That not every situation is black and white. The older I get, the more I find myself saying it's not that simple. That staying in and relaxing is enjoyable and not boring. As a kid I was upset with my mom for not getting me some silly thing I wanted because she only had $100-ish in the bank. I was so sure that $100 is a lot of money. 20 years later I now understand it is not. I used to care a lot about what everyone thought of me. Sometimes I still do, but as I grew older I realized nobody really thinks about you cause they're too busy thinking about themselves. What stereotypes about your country annoy the F out of you? That all Americans are obese. Only 40% of us are. I'll have you know. That all Canadians are nice. No, we all have assholes. Don't let our assholes think they aren't assholes. I hate when people insinuate that us Britons have bad teeth. I mean, I don't have teeth, so I don't know what they're talking about. Some people think that we Australians live in constant fear of deadly spider and snake bites, which is untrue and just ridiculous. The real danger are the drop bears, which prevent us going outside at night. No, eating dogs is not common here in the Philippines.